Welcome to Half Armenian Cooking. I'm Michael Mikulka, and on this show we explore a variety of the most popular Armenian fusion dishes from around the world. You'll discover authentic multicultural cuisines, vibrant exotic flavors, traditional foods that definitely exist. Come join me and see what we're cooking today. Baravzez, Inch Pesek, Lavem. Today I'm making spicy cumin lamb noodles, a Xi'an-Armenian fusion dish initially popularized by Armeni'an Famous Foods in Queens, New York. The first thing to do is slicing and marinating the lamb. Lamb shoulder is the traditional choice for this recipe, which is good news because my local supermarket only carries ground lamb and lamb shoulder. Separate the meat from the fat and slice it against the grain into thin strips. Use a piece of paper towel in your non-dominant hand if you think that raw meat is gross and you don't have any plastic gloves. And there you have it, $8 worth of lamb. We're going to marinate it with some peanut oil, salt, a little too much cornstarch, and some liaojiu, aka Shaoxing wine. We're largely imitating the recipe created by Armeni'an Famous Foods. Next up, we're going to make our chili oil. Add some Sichuan peppercorns to a saucepan, then throw in some Orfa pepper. Add a few pieces of sand ginger, and cook it all until it's fragrant. Meanwhile, start heating up some peanut oil in a pot. Add a paper shell walnut, a piece of Chinese black cardamom, and off camera, add a thinly sliced piece of ginger. Empty the contents of the saucepan into a spice grinder and grind them up. Check to make sure it's thoroughly ground. If there are still any flecks of Sichuan peppercorn, they tend to feel gritty and get stuck in your teeth. Grind it some more until it's a smooth powder. Empty your chili powder into a bowl that's big enough to also hold the peanut oil you've got heating up. Remove the walnut and the black cardamom and the thin piece of ginger that was added off camera. Shift the camera back to the bowl of chili powder and add the hot oil. It should be bubbling aggressively when you add it, otherwise it's not hot enough. When the thin piece of ginger browns and starts to wrinkle up, it should be good to pour. Many of the recipes I've seen say to pour the oil in at 3 different stages of temperature, so I'm doing that. Though I haven't really noticed much of a difference when I've been lazy and poured it in all at once. So we're adding flour to a large bowl, and adding a thin stream of hot water. Also add some salt. Now back to the thin stream of hot water. We're constantly stirring to incorporate it into the flour and not let any particular section get wetter than the rest of it. Knead the dough until the flour is incorporated, then turn it out onto a cutting board, pouring any excess flour underneath the dough. This next part is the part that is important for chewy noodles, at least in my experience. Flatten the dough outwards, then fold it into thirds. Turn it 90 degrees, then do the same thing. Flatten the dough outwards, then fold it into thirds and turn 90 degrees again. Do this for at least 8 minutes. Supposedly, this technique helps align the gluten into the ideal structure. I forget where I initially read about it, and I don't know if the science behind it is real or not, but when I started doing this, my noodles started getting chewier and easier to stretch. 8 minutes later, form it into a ball and cover it to rest for at least half an hour, but ideally longer. Time to prep ingredients for the stir fry. Mince up a clove of garlic, about half of a small onion, some hot peppers. I'm using Fresno peppers because they've got this fruity sweetness to them, and also because lots of Armenians live in Fresno. They're pretty mild, so I'm adding a lot. We'll also cut 1 green bell pepper into medium-sized pieces. And we'll finish it up with some Chinese chives. For cumin lamb, we also need some cumin. We're going to lightly pulse it a few times so that part of it is powder and part of it is still larger pieces. Okay, we've got our marinated lamb, which has been patted dry with some paper towels. We're turning the heat up pretty high, and we're adding several spoonfuls of that goth chili oil to the saucepan. We'll also add a little bit of sesame oil and swirl it so that it coats the entire bottom of the pan. Once the pan is sufficiently hot, add the lamb. Maybe you should also lightly grease the plate that you're putting the lamb on so that it doesn't stick and make you look foolish. Distribute the lamb evenly among the pot so that it will brown properly. It's not a cooking show if you don't name drop the Maillard reaction a few too many times, so Maillard, 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 Maillard. Once they've Maillarded, flip them over. When the other side is finished Maillarding and the lamb is covered in Maillardy goodness, add in the cumin and give it a good toss. Move the lamb to the side and add in the garlic, onions, and peppers. Give them 30 seconds or so, and then mix them with the lamb. Add in some more chili oil. Now we're going to add the most essential element, pomegranate molasses. This is maybe about half a cup, but we'll also add a solid glug of Chinese black vinegar. Also, even more chili oil. Finish it off with a little bit of liaoju, aka Shaoxing wine. Set it to the side, and let's cook our noodles. Break off 3 chunks of dough and flatten them out with your hands. If you have a pasta machine, pass them through in the widest setting, then on the 3rd widest setting. If not, just roll it reasonably flat. Slice the noodles into large, thick strips. Xi'an-Armenian Famous Foods doesn't slice them first. They just tear them with their hands and throw them into the pot. But I know my limitations, so I'm cheating by slicing them and pulling each individual noodle. Once the water is boiling, firmly grasp each side of the noodle and stretch it out. Then biang it a few times. I don't know the science behind it, but this method leads to such a great chewy texture. It's completely different than if I had passed it through the pasta machine to the same thickness and length. Stretch and biang all of your noodles, working quickly because fresh noodles cook fast, though these will be chewy enough that we can get away with overcooking the first ones a bit. Put the saucepan with the lamb back on medium heat. About 90 seconds after you put in your final noodle, drain them, rinse them in cold water to stop the cooking, and drain them again. Add the noodles to the lamb, add the garlic chives, add yet another bit of that chili oil, and give everything a good mix. And once everything is incorporated evenly, you've got Armenian spicy cumin lamb noodles. But are they any good? It's so good. The lamb is actually tender. I seriously thought that I was going to overcook the lamb. Most of us don't live in New York City, but with a bit of time, effort, and preparation, we can make spicy cumin lamb noodles that are every bit as good as the ones at Armeni'an Famous Foods.